your free AirPods today by clicking the first link in the description down below.
So I found out I had a huge tumor on my ovary. It was growing hair. Then I got surgery to remove it, and they found out I had stage 4 endometriosis, which would severely impact future fertility. Then I go home in extreme pain. I go to the ER that night because I'm doubled over and screaming in pain. The ER tells me it's residual gas from the laparoscopy. So then I sit on my recliner for 3 days crying out in pain and vomiting every single thing I try to ingest. Not farting or belching at all, like you need to do after a laparoscopy to get rid of the excess gas used to inflate the area they work on. Then I have enough and get my husband to take me to a different hospital. They do a scan with contrast dye. Boy, was that difficult to keep down long enough for the scan, and they find out that I'm bleeding internally and leaking poo into my abdominal cavity. Then I get taken in for emergency surgery. Before the surgery I'm informed that there is also a huge tumor in the middle of my right ovary and would have to have it out. I could either do it then or at a later date. I opt to do it then. I wake up from the surgery after 4 days in a medically induced coma in a different hospital in the ICU. I'm intubated and have a nasogastric tube. I panic and I see a nurse in the hall but can't get her attention. I undo my restraint on my left hand and yank out the tubes. You can rip out your vocal cords by doing that. Luckily I didn't and yell for help. Then I proceed to spend weeks in the hospital recovering, eating nothing but soup broth. I eventually get upgraded to ensure I get MRSA in the surgical wound, and it takes a few rounds of very strong antibiotics to contend with it. A bunch of my hair falls out. I go home and can't bathe for a few weeks because the incision is still pretty much open. They didn't stitch the skin together. I have to have a home health nurse visit me every day to clean the wounds. It takes about a year to heal. I keep getting recurring MRSA infections in the top of the incision site inside of my belly button. Whenever the MRSA comes back, my belly button oozes a ton of pus and blood and forms a giant, painful boil. It's been 2 years and this hit is still happening. Edit. I just wanted to clarify that my intestine was lacerated during the initial surgery for my ovary. Edit 2. I should add that I also accidentally spread the MRSA to my husband, my primary caretaker at home, and then to my kids. So that's another way in which this story kept getting worse. Now they have recurring MRSA infections in their sinuses and throats. I also lost my license because I had gotten a speeding ticket and had to take a class, which I did, and needed to mail within the certificate in a certain span of time, which happened to be while I was hospitalized. Now I have a ton of court and DMV fees that I have slowly been working on paying. Still can't drive because we have not been able to get the funds together to pay it. Wow. That's awful. I sincerely hope things improve for you. Thanks. I really just want to get this belly button MRSA kicked. I'd been seeing doctors about it and I was overweight, so they were having a hard time seeing or palpating it. But holy crap, could I ever feel it. I've lost weight, so it's much easier to see now. Recently I got put on meds to fight MRSA on my arm and seems to have knocked it out in my belly button for now. It's been 2 weeks. Hopefully it stays that way. I posted this a long time ago, but here it is again. I was working for a large hotel chain in London for a few weeks, shooting interiors/exteriors for their brochures, and I'd end up going from hotel to hotel meeting manager/assistants who would take me round the hotel all day while I took my photos, knowing full well that no one works in a hotel without acquiring some pretty amazing stories. I would interrogate each one for their most outrageous tales. I got to hear a bunch of stories that ranged from fascinating to dull: the orgies, the famous faces cheating on their spouses, the occasional slaughtered goat in the bath, incredibly more common than you might think, and the time that the cast of Friends stayed at the hotel while they were filming those episodes in London. One story rose above the rest. A gentleman, alone in his suite, woke up in the middle of the night with a dire need to unload his bowels. I mean a really desperate need. To the point that he must have woken up in a panic as he jumped out of bed, but naked, bolted for the bathroom door and burst inside. Except he didn't. In his tired state, and no doubt thanks to his unfamiliarity with the hotel room, he bolted for the front door of the room by mistake and let the door shut behind him. Now this man, who both, let's not forget, feels an agonizing rumbling in his intestines and is as naked as the day he was born, suddenly finds himself in the corridor and panics. Understandably, his desire to hit is so strong that it overwhelms any other thought going through his head. He must poop. He starts banging like a maniac on a neighboring door, hoping someone will answer, and eventually, someone does. A man opens up the door, probably assuming that a fire has started in the hotel and he's being woken up for an emergency evacuation. And in a sense, he's half right. Our naked hero bursts into the room, pushing past the confused and bewildered occupant, apologizing along the way, and makes a break for the bathroom. But no, he doesn't make it. Halfway there, his sphincter gives in to the pressure and he unloads a spray of effluent across the floor of the stranger. Some of the foulest smelling waste imaginable is dumped all over the place in a mottled line, leading to the toilet. The room's original occupant, who was up until this point standing scared, bewildered and confused by the door still, immediately vomited. To his credit, the digestively challenged man did make it to the sitting position in the bathroom, and sat there, crying and apologizing to the vomiting man and eventually the hotel staff, for a full 10 minutes, while his gut punished him for some earlier indiscretion. When the hitter had finished, the hotel moved the hitter's belongings, some of which were speckled with the hitter's feces, to a new room, and I assume that the hitter had a nice long shower. But wait, it gets worse. In the morning after the debacle, the hitter walked into the restaurant for breakfast, and who should be there but last night's victim, sat eating his cornflakes. The two apparently locked eyes, whereupon last night's memories must have come flooding back to the victim with a vengeance. Because the poor man, in the middle of a crowded room full of people enjoying their food, immediately vomited all over the table. This is quite possibly the best and the worst thing I've ever read. Copied and pasted, because I posted this before. Two of my friends had a falling out. I was dying to know what was going on between them, because they lived together, and I felt like I was watching mommy and daddy get divorced. One friend was never around, and the other told me he honestly didn't know what going on. After a couple months, I finally got someone on one time with the friend who wasn't around, and he explained everything to me in detail. Basically, he asked if he could date the other friend's cousin, who emphatically said no. But since the other friend had dated his cousin without asking, he violated bro code and started seeing her anyway. In dating this girl, he came to find out that she and the other friend were more than just cousins. They had carried on a physical relationship for years. Basically, they ducked like bunnies whenever the family wasn't looking. But hold on, it gets worse. He was told this went on for 10 years. The girl was 22. Her cousin was 24. They had been having sex since middle school. But hold the duck on. It gets worse. The girl's father and her cousin's father are identical twins. Let that sink in for a second. Genetically, they are half siblings. At that point in the story, I downered my ear and apologized for even asking about what was going on. I wish I never knew. As a follow-up, they no longer live together or speak to each other. I'm still really close with the incest-free friend. I see the other friend in passing, and we are still friends. But it's hard to look him in the eye. Edit. Oh. And the non-incestuous couple split up shortly after, because he couldn't handle it. Not sure if she's still ducking her cousin or not. Bro code doesn't extend to cousins. That's a sister's thing and that's about it. Well, technically. Came home from work to find my fiancé in bed with someone else. 3 months before the wedding. It gets worse. I'm a female. My ex-fiancé a male. The other person, also a dude. He was using me to hide his sexuality from his family. Too afraid to come out of the closet. It gets worse. I came back the next day for my stuff. He pushed me through a wall and down a flight of stairs. I'm okay now. It was a while ago. Now have a very stable, safe, honest relationship with a great guy. who thankfully isn't cheating and isn't in the closet. I found out my ex-husband was cheating on me with guys he met on Craigslist. We had been married for 3 months and had a child together. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I know how it can mess with you. At least it messed me up for a while. I questioned everything and spent way too long trying to figure out what I missed along the way. Anyway, I'm glad you're doing better. You deserve someone that won't cheat or lie to you. As do you. My mom planned a 3-generation trip of a lifetime with my grandpa, my brother, and me. We are going to stay in Vegas for 1 day, go down to a gold mine of one of her friends, visit the Grand Canyon, and then fly back from Phoenix, while making multiple stops on Route 66. We were going to leave after my high school graduation. On the day of my graduation, my grandpa hits his head because the Comfort Inn he is staying in installed new slippery tubs. He wasn't the first person injured. He did a concussion test on himself, and since he didn't have a bump on his head, he went to my graduation and went on the trip with us. We spent a night in Vegas checking out the casinos. But my brother and I can't gamble or drink, so there wasn't a lot we could do. We go to bed and wake up the next morning and went to check out. But our grandpa wasn't down yet. He doesn't answer his phone and we ask the hotel manager to let us into his room. We find him unconscious and unresponsive. They take him to a hospital and we find out he has a brain clot. They aren't able to treat it, so we have to take him off life support, and he died 7 hours later. Once we got home we tried to get a death certificate, but we are told that it could take between 4-6 weeks for them to give it to us. 6 weeks later we received a death certificate with a mistake because the person who filled it out googled my grandpa's address instead of using the one we gave them. A couple of days ago, 5 weeks later, we have received the death certificate. In a week my mom and brother are going down to Florida to get his stuff. But I can't go with them because of college. We still don't even know where his will is, and I bet more hit is going to hit the fan. In short, Comfort Inn kills my grandpa immediately after my graduation. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, including death certificates. And I won't be able to go down to my grandpa's house for the last time. Hi. Please tell me your grandpa's estate is suing the hit out of Comfort Inn. Comfort Inn is owned by Choice Hotels, which has pretty deep pockets. It sounds to me like you have a really strong case if other people have slipped in the tubs before. And honestly, a wrongful death claim can be a life-changing amount of money if you invest it properly. Not live like a king money, but more like substantially and perpetually increase your standard of living with zero risk money. Suing for just the money is usually a bad idea. Suing because you want a company to change their policies and potentially save other people's lives is. Court cases are long and trying endeavors, and it can be difficult for someone like Op that has experienced a very significant loss to relive that over and over again in front of everyone and have every bit scrutinized just for money. Now, I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong to do that. I'm all for taking money away from giant corporations. I'm only saying, if you don't feel like you are fighting for something worth fighting for, the battle becomes that much more grueling. Got hit with a tropical storm. It became a hurricane. Hid in the sink with my cats, but couldn't get my dog in. Cats scratched me and pissed on me. Exited in the morning and the roof was off, and the kitchen was flooded. My car had taken a direct hit from a power transformer and was completely ducked. The road to the house had 10 or 12 downed trees blocking it. Surrounded by jungle, so had to hack my way out with a machete. Make it to work. Work is gone. The entire office building is gone. Just debris. Get chased while dogs on my way to friend's house. Friend comes over with chainsaw to clear road. A ducking tree falls on me. No running water or power for months. I get fired because there literally is no more work as it doesn't exist. Bye bye insurance. Never seen dog since hurricane. He is probably either dead or lost. Takes a year to find a new job. Holy duck. Are you okay now at least, or in recovery? My best wishes to you. I'm fine. This was years ago. In late 2016, my live-in girlfriend and I were in a rough patch. I was kind of riding it out until the end of the lease to see if things got any better. Narrator, they did not. In late October, she told me that she was breaking up with me. A week later, I was laid off. She moved out shortly after. A few weeks after that, I saw on social media that she had gotten engaged. Sometime after that, mutual friends assured me that she had been cheating. I found a contract job, which I hated. While there, I started a side contracting gig. When the primary contract ended, I decided to take my side gig full time. Since I suck at sales, I couldn't manage to get traction. Fortunately, I'm now in a job I enjoy very much. Back in the gym losing weight and dating more. Basically, if my life were an NFL team, the coach would call this a rebuilding year. Duck, a rebuilding year. This is the year you sneak into the playoffs and upset a division champion. You're doing great, man. The Cleveland Browns? Yes please. All jokes aside, glad to hear you're doing you. Stay at it. All this hard work will pay off.